All right, welcome everybody. We're excited to have you. We will give a minute or two for everybody to join in. Welcome everybody. If you're just joining us, we're just letting a minute or two before we get started, but welcome. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Hello, everybody. My name is Mario Munoz. I'm the Recruitment Outreach Coordinator for the University of Arizona School of Mining and Mineral Resources. And I'm also the Education and Outreach Chair of the Women in Mining Arizona chapter. First, we'd like to say welcome and thank you for joining us today. This is a special webinar. It's actually a joint webinar with the Women in Mining Montana chapter. So we're excited to have everybody here and have this collaboration. And today's webinar will be about the Black Butte project. Before getting started, we want to give a brief introduction to our organization, local chapters, and why we're hosting these talks. So the Women in Mining Arizona chapter, or WIM Arizona, is a nonprofit organization with 5 objectives, one of which is to educate our members and the public on technology, economic, regulatory, and other mining-related topics. These monthly DEGAN webinars are a part of our efforts to meet this commitment. And now we'd like to turn it over to WIM Montana so they can tell us a little bit more about their chapter.
All right, I just want to make sure everyone can hear me all right before I get started. Okay, great. So a little bit about WIM Montana. We are a fairly new chapter. We formed in June of 2021. It took us quite a few months to get our articles of incorporation and bylaws established to become a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We were voted in at the WIM USA conference last fall as the newest chapter of WIM USA. We do currently have over 80 members between Black Butte Project and also Siboney Stillwater, and all of those members are currently within the state chapter organization. We did just hold our annual membership meeting and officer elections where we voted all of our officers back and welcomed a new treasurer, and a couple events that we have coming up. We've reached out for booths at a Montana Mine Design and Operation Closure Conference, and also planning some spring events. So stay tuned to look for those definite dates when we have those.
All right, thank you. We'd also like to give a brief thanks to our overall sponsor of the WIM Arizona Diamond sponsor, Freeport-McMoran. Thank you for your support. And now I'll turn it over to Cassie Johnson, who will introduce our speakers.
Good afternoon, everybody. As he said, I'm Cassie Johnson. I'm the co-chair of our outreach program, and I will be introducing our speakers today. So up first, we have Lacey. Lacey received a bachelor's degree in environmental science with a major in geology from the University of Montana Western in 2015. Since graduating, she has spent time working as an undergrad mine geologist at Kingston Gold Mine in Juneau, Alaska, and at Sandfire's Degressa Copper Mine in Western Australia. Up next, we have Nancy. Nancy has worked for Black Butte Copper since 2013 and has over 25 years of business world experience through the private sector, publicly traded sector, international trade, communications, legislative relations, and forming public policy at the local, state, and federal level. Before joining the company, Nancy was the executive director of the Montana Taxpayers Association, and prior to that was the National Affairs Director for the Montana Farm Bureau Federation. Up next, we have Aaron. Aaron received a bachelor's degree in mining engineering from the Colorado School of Mines and conducted postgraduate studies in geology at the University of Northern Colorado. Aaron's previous operational experience includes mining engineering roles at the Eagle Mine in Michigan and both mining engineering and production geologist roles at Stillwater East Boulder Mine in Montana. Over the past 6 years, Aaron has worked on various projects to optimize operations efficiency in underground hard rock metal mines. Up next, we have Gina. Gina received her bachelor's degree in civil engineering and land rehabilitation from Montana State University. She recently joined the Sandfire Resources team, focusing on permitting, environmental compliance, and sustainability programs. Gina has prior experience with Newmont Mining, supporting environmental programs at surface gold mining operations. Now I will turn it over to our 4 presenters.
You're on mute, Nancy.
You're on mute.
There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, thanks for having us today, and we'll go ahead and start our presentation. We've separated it into different areas, our corporate overview, engineering, geology, and environment. So we'll go ahead and get started. We are a publicly traded company, so we always start with our disclaimer that some of what we talk about are future-looking statements. I'll skip this one because we already went over it a little bit. And then what I'll share with you is the Black Butte.
Sorry to interrupt. We can't see a presentation right now.
Super, good to understand. Thank you. It's up on our screen.
Okay, how about now?
It says it started sharing screen, but nothing's coming through.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Maybe try stop sharing it and resharing it.
Okay.
A greenfield project, and which started the exploration in the late 1970s, looking for zinc. Copper was found, but not enough that there was a lot of interest in it at that point. And so all of the companies went away. And when copper prices started coming back up in around 2008, then there was interest in this project again, and 17 companies looked at leasing it. And the guy that discovered it was actually from this community of White Sulphur Springs, Montana. And they reached out to him, and he went to a company he was working for in Alaska, and that's what started the funding for this project. They started drilling again, and they found more copper than was ever expected. And it's now been permitted. We'll talk a little bit about that timeline and where we're at in the process. We have not started construction of our underground facility yet. We did receive our mine operating permit in April of 2020. It's a very comprehensive process with over a 2-year EIS. One thing that's unique about our project is that we're completely on private property. There is no federal or state property involved in what we're currently have permitted. This will be an all underground mine, which is a high grade sulfide deposit. And we have enough to mine that will last at least 10 years. And we have found a second deposit that we're starting a pre-feasibility on that will be talked about a little bit later. And so as you can see on the map, we are fairly centrally located in Montana. And this project is fairly near a very famous river called the Smith River that you can take a 5-day float on, which is a permitted float. And so there's always a little controversy around anything related to water. And we do have our challenges, but it's always worthy to note that we're 17 stream miles from the river, actually 18 stream miles from the river and 12 air miles. All right. Oops, wrong way.
Sorry about this.
That's okay, we'll get there. And so we have gone, as we mentioned, through the permitting process, and these are all the permits that we were required to get for, as most of you know, in the mining world. But one of the things I just wanted to point out is the length of time it takes to get through this process. So we put in our original permit in 2015. We got our permit in 2020 and immediately had a challenge to it in the court system. That was heard last summer, and last week we did get a district court ruling against our project, and so now we will go on to the Supreme Court. We're looking at this as a halftime, and where we now know the playbook and what's expected of us, and this is still a very permittable project, and our board and our investors are fully committed to going forward with the project, even with this first decision made. Mark. All right, so a couple of things that I just wanted to mention from a community outreach standpoint that are a little different that I think should be interesting to others in other states is that Montana is the only state that has what's called the Hard Rock Mining Impact Act. And that means that by law, we have to look at all the social and economic effects that we will have on the community, and we have to deal with them up front before any construction can start. And so that is for all local governments. So it is city government, county government, and schools. So if we have any effect on those three, that has to be money up front. Our money ended up being a little less than $500,000. And so that money is sitting in escrow and is being pulled out of there over a 3-year term to do things such as planning. This is a fairly small community. We have about 1,000 people that live in the community, and our county is about 2,000. So us bringing in the future 240 full-time employees is definitely going to affect our community. I'll also say that as somebody that actually grew up here, so it's pretty unique, I get to work on this project, that we want families to live here. You know, we were like a lot of rural Montana before COVID, really struggling for people to come back. So we're looking forward to that. But this money is available. The community is drawing off of it in the lieu of future taxes, and is a really nice way to make sure that that boom and bust cycle that historically has plagued the mining industry does not happen here. The other thing that's been really important to us is we've been very aggressive on the social license front. And one of the things that's unique about this project that we're doing is we've created the Marr County Stewardship Council, and it will act, if you're familiar with Siboney-Stillwater's Good Neighbor Agreement, it will act a lot like this. And so what we've done is we've helped community stakeholders that are for and against the mine to create a group that will be an oversight group for our mine. And we fund that, and we'll continue to fund that in the areas of economic development for the community, social license, which will be long-term, probably some type of foundation, and environment, which will be a third-party environmental contractor that they contract with that can come in and test any of our processes anytime that they would like to make sure we're doing what we say we can want to do. So transparency has been very important to this project, and I think it will continue to be important to the future of mining. We regularly have site tours. We have a transparency library with all of our documents online, and we're very active on social media. We really encourage all of our staff to be involved locally, and most of our staff do live locally, including our CEO. Again,
That's me.
thank you. This is going to go over to Erin, who is our, sorry, Gina. I'm looking at the wrong person. This is going to go over to Gina, who is our environmental engineer.
Perfect. All right. Well, so what I'm going to do now is just kind of go through, kind of dive into the details as far as those permitting activities that Nancy spoke to, and really kind of present a little bit about kind of the structure of our permitting and what that looks like. So kind of our overarching permit document, if you will, is our mine operating permit, or MOP. There's a lot of different pieces that make up this permit and really kind of the development of the permit itself. The first step is really the baseline environmental studies, covering all of these different areas, really kind of every piece of the environment, the kind of social aspects, historic and cultural aspects, the economy, really kind of every piece of our project, and what do we want to know about it before we actually start development of our operation. Within that, or sorry, not within that, but kind of following that, we'll have our reclamation plan, in which we detail how are we actually closing the mine, what does our reclamation activity look like, what are our post-closure monitoring and maintenance activities, and then along with that, of course, a major component is the bond amount and the cost estimating for all of those activities, and how do we actually plan to achieve that closure. In addition, we also have a MEPA review. This is our Montana Environmental Policy Act. If you're familiar, this really mirrors NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act. And what that requires is either an environmental assessment or an environmental impact statement. Really the driver decision point there is if your project could have significant environmental impacts, then that kind of leads you towards the environmental impact statement, which is a much more substantial kind of review, comprehensive review of your baseline study work and your mining and reclamation plan. So we have completed that EIS process. As Nancy said, it was about a 2-year endeavor. And then along with that goes into the mine operating permit, as well as a lot of supporting permits. Nancy showed you the big long list, but really everything from discharge permits, air quality, stream beds, wetlands, stormwater, historic preservation opportunities, and water rights. I know for I'm sure a lot of you in Arizona, water rights is something that you probably think about a lot as well. So if we jump to the next slide, I just wanted to kind of give a little bit more context in that arena, and something that we are proud of the way that we've approached this. So just to kind of frame this out for you, Sheep Creek is one of our kind of larger local stream bodies. Over a year, and this kind of blue figure on the left-hand side, our maximum flow is about 825 CFS. Our average flow is really just kind of a little piece of that pie, 56 CFS. And then our base flow in the winter season is about 15 CFS. So zooming into that yellow kind of wedge there over the overall flow, we see a red wedge even within that. So 1.12 CFS, it's our maximum potential use from the mine operation itself. That's then split into smaller components of how we're using that water, and our plans for replacing and mitigating those rights within the stream itself. Really what I want to kind of highlight here is that I think for a lot of technical folks, people who work with these kind of numbers a lot, we know what a CFS is, and we kind of have some context for what that means. I think this kind of statement on the bottom is really helpful. And something that we really try to communicate with the public is what is a CFS? How do we understand what that actually looks like? So we compared it to a small sprinkler irrigation system, and really try to help, lay people, folks from the public, or just people that don't work with these numbers all the time, really kind of understand what that means, and help them kind of frame what those impacts could look like in a stream body, and help them understand kind of that we're really trying to be protective of these water sources. And then kind of last but not least here is environmental monitoring. With that kind of extensive baseline data set that we have, we continue to monitor constantly, monthly, weekly, daily in some arenas. Really, we want to make sure that we know the landscape that we're working in and make sure that if there is something that is unusual, that we're aware of it from day one. So we have a really extensive baseline data set, and we continue our compliance reporting every step of the way throughout the process. So with that, I will hand it over to Lacey to give you some information on the geology, all the exciting stuff.
Great, thanks, Gina. Mario, we're halfway through. Just want to check in. We're doing okay on time? Great, okay. Well, kind of the big picture before we hone in on the actual deposit, we're looking at here the regional geology, which is the Belt Basin, which many notable deposits sit within. The Black Butte Copper deposit does sit along the north margin of the Helena embayment within the Belt Supergroup sediments, which is an assemblage of fine-grained sedimentary rocks of late Precambrian age. The Belt Supergroup is more than 15 kilometers thick, and it is considered to be one of the best exposed and most accessible sequences of Proterozoic rocks. The rocks of the Belt Supergroup contain significant deposits of lead, zinc, silver, gold, and other important metals. As Nancy mentioned, in the 70s, when many exploration companies came in, including Cominco International, which kind of founded the efforts, they were looking for another deposit similar to the Sullivan deposit, which is there in southern British Columbia. The Sullivan deposit is considered to be one of the largest SEDEX deposits in the world. Other notable deposits within the Belt Supergroup are the silver veins at Coeur d'Alene, also the copper silver deposits at Rock Creek, Montanore, and Troy. We have the cobalt copper deposits in the Idaho Cobalt Belt, and then also sitting on that northern margin there, the Black Butte Copper. And just note that all of these are hosted within the Belt Supergroup sediments except Butte, which is in the middle there. And as many of you are probably aware with the Berkeley pit, that is where that sits. So moving into the geology of the Johnny Lee itself here, we have a cross section looking west of what our design will look like when we start construction. The access tunnel will start on the backside of Sawmill Hill, and I think it's important to note that from the highway and county roads, this will all be hidden. So as you're driving by, you're on the county road, you're not going to see a big hole in the ground. So all activities will be tucked away from the site, and then we will access the upper zone by a mile-long decline at about a 15% grade. And as you see here in the cross-section, within the first about 1,000 meters, we will hit the water table. So all mining activities are below the mining or the water table. After we drive about a mile long, we'll hit the upper copper zone, which is colored in green here. That sits about 150 to 600 feet below the surface. It is shallow dipping and has a 9.7 million tons with a 2.4% copper grade, which is measured and indicated. After the upper zone, we'll drive the access tunnel down to the lower zone, which is a little more steeply to moderately dipping. It is quite smaller in size than the upper zone, but definitely higher grade. It sits about 1,100 to 1,500 feet below the surface and has a measured and indicated resource of 1.2 million tons with 6.8% copper. So the Johnny Lee deposit as a whole has a relatively low footprint compared to a lot of other underground mines in the world, but has some of the highest copper grades undeveloped in the world, which makes our project unique. Going to more kind of the cross-section geology of the deposits, we have the Johnny Lee, which, as we mentioned, is the only deposit currently permitted within the mine operating permit. Nancy mentioned we have another deposit that is not within our mine operating permit called the Lowry deposit. It sits about 1.2 miles east of the Johnny Lee deposit. The Lowry will utilize existing underground infrastructure from the Johnny Lee deposit. and no additional surface disturbance will be needed, probably besides a couple of vent raises. Both the Johnny Lee and the Lowry are stratiform deposits of copper and shale dominant sedimentary rocks. The host rocks are relatively soft shales, calcareous shales, and limestone with occasionally harder quartzite. The ore zones do consist of stacked layers of massive to semi-massive sulfide. These are often silicified and usually almost always broken. Due to the high carbonate content of the shales, though, the host rock does act as a natural buffer. You see in the cross section here our main regional structure, which acts as the shelf basin kind of boundary for our deposit, is the Volcano Valley Fault that runs west to east across the property. Then we have many other southwest, northeast trending younger faults that are truncated up against the Volcano Valley Fault. You can see in the Lowry section that a lot of these younger faults do down drop the deposit, sometimes up to almost 60 meters on the east side of the faults. And just to note here, the Lowry deposit is currently not permitted, but we did just finish up resource drilling in March. And we are awaiting assays, and currently work for a pre-feasibility study is underway. So we are very excited about that work that is being done. With that, I will pass it on to Erin.
All right, thank you. So I'll finish up with a site plant and underground overview. So as you can see in these two figures, the one on the left is just a schematic of how our site footprint will look when everything is constructed. And the figure on the right is actually a schematic of how the plant will look. So everything is all on privately owned ground that's leased by us. We lease the surface rights and the mineral rights. So the entire site will be about 310 acres of surface disturbance. It'll include a processing facility, a paste plant, a reverse osmosis water treatment plant, administrative buildings, and then we'll have various ponds as well as our cemented tailings facility. So within the processing facility, we'll have crushing, grinding, traditional copper flotation circuit, which will produce a copper concentrate, and then we will have a load out facility, which we will ship that concentrate off. Right now, we're projected to send about 1.2 million metric tons through the mill per year, resulting in an average copper concentrate grade of 23.5% and producing about 120,000 metric tons of copper concentrate per year. With our paste plant, we plan to send 45% of the tailings back to the underground to backfill the workings, and the other 55% of the tailings will go to our cemented tailings facility, and I will touch on that just a little bit later. And then with our water treatment plant, it's staged to be a two-stage reverse osmosis, and it will be discharged through an underground infiltration gallery. And then finally, we'll have administrative buildings. The dry buildings will be there. There'll be a parking lot and everything like that. So just some other things to note on our site footprint there. We'll have our process water pond, which we'll use for underground and any mill processes. Our contact water pond will act as a settling pond coming out from the underground. We'll have a brine reject pond to store brine from the reverse osmosis treatment plant. We also have a treated water storage pond to deal with some of our nitrates throughout the summer months. And then our non-contact water reservoir is also planned for our some of our water rights use. So moving on to the underground mining methods, as Lacey said, we will have a single main decline accessing the ore bodies. It'll be a 15% decline, and it'll be about 17 feet by 17 feet. So again, about approximately 1 mile to the upper copper zone, and then another mile down to the lower copper zone. Since the upper zone is more flatly dipping, it will be a drift and fill mining method. The lower zone will be cut and fills. The ore will be trucked out using the main decline, so we won't have any conveyance systems. And then with our ventilation, we'll have 3 ventilation raises, 1 intake, 2 exhaust, and then the main decline will be our secondary intake, and it will be a negative pressure system. So the figures here, the bottom left is a plan view of the lower zone. The middle figure there is a side view of the cut and fill of the lower zone as well. And then just touch quickly on our cemented tailings facility. We are creating a state-of-the-art facility. It's going to be a non-liquid storage impoundment. So it is designed to withstand a 1 in 10,000 year earthquake event, and also 1.5 times the maximum flood event, which in Montana is 22 inches of rain on top of 11 inches of wet snow in one storm. So that equates to about 270 acre feet of water is what our impoundment can actually hold. So that is actually part of the 2015 Montana dam standards that came out. We are not required to meet those standards since we are not a traditional liquid facility, but we do meet them anyway. And so just some other things that we like to note about this. We've got some other engineered safety systems in place. Designed here, we only have 1 engineered berm. So 3 of the sides of the cemented tailings facility are actually going to be built into the topography. So there's only going to be 1 engineered berm. The second is that we'll have multiple layers of drain systems. As you can see in this depiction, we'll have a rock drain, there'll be a basin drain system, and then there'll be a foundation drain as well. So this entire facility will be lined with a double HDPE liner. And it will also, in reclamation, it'll be capped with another layer of the HDPE liner. And then it will be capped with subgrade, subsoil, and topsoil for a total of 5 feet of cap on there, which exceeds state and federal guidelines for reclamation and closure. So we are very proud of the work that we've done for our tailings facility. And we know that it is state of the art, but we also know that we're trying to be a forefront in this space. So then just one last slide we have here. So this is the surface footprint of how it'll look like when our mine is 100% reclaimed. So obviously, as many people here know, modern mining does restore all sites to their original land uses and water flows. So in our case, it's agricultural use, which is what we'll restore our land to. And this will protect our water, it'll protect our landscapes, and yeah, it'll just bring everything back to how it was beforehand, which a lot of people worry about in this space. And we're pretty proud of that as well. So with that, we just like to say thank you again for everybody for sitting in on our presentation, and we'll open it up to some questions.
Right. Thank you, ladies, so much. That was a great presentation. We've had a lot of questions come in, so we'll try to get through as many as possible before 12:45. But any we don't get through, we'll be able to provide contact information for the presenters for follow-up. The first one that came in is the reverse osmosis water treatment. Are there examples, existing examples where this is currently done in mining? And do you have a pilot plant, or is this currently just an on-paper plan?
Yeah, I can take that. Sure. Yep. So good question. Let me just kind of unpack the pieces there. There are, oh yeah, where's the camera? There are several examples of reverse osmosis being used in mining in a lot of different arenas. Really, reverse osmosis is kind of an interesting technology, and it's not brand new. But it's really, really effective. And so there's a couple other sites in Montana that use reverse osmosis, and really, I think, are kind of around the nation. What was the second part? If we have a pilot plant. We don't have one right now. We have done some pretty extensive test work and kind of modeling and really proofing out that treatment methodology. And we feel pretty confident that it's the right option for us. So yeah, I think it'll be exciting and probably the right fit for our needs.
Great, thank you. And then from Bob Cummings, his question is about the upper decline. He's wondering why this is preferred over shaft access in this case.
Yeah, so that's a great question as well. So a lot of, yeah. So we really are trying to minimize the footprint as we can. With the deposit being as shallow as it is, yes, like some people may argue an open pit would be a little bit more economical. Some people may argue that the shaft would be better. So the actual deposit sits under an area where people have some residential housing right there. And also putting the decline where it is at on the other side of Sawmill Hill takes us a little bit farther away from Sheep Creek and that main tributary into the Smith River. So the reason why we did put that over the hill is so that all of the mill, all of the processed water ponds, all of the cement tailings facility, everything like that, all the infrastructure would be farther away from that tributary. So really kind of trying to do everything in the most environmentally sound way that we can.
Perfect, thank you. And then we've had a question about recording, and I just want to let everyone know that a recording of this presentation will be in our YouTube channel, which Mario has linked in the chat. That was the next question. So that was more for us, I guess, than you ladies. And then from Max Drexler, how is the sulfide recovery with the problematic carbonate and the shale gang?
Can you repeat that one more time?
Sure. He's asking about sulfide recovery within the problematic carbonate and shale gang.
All right, so that's a good question. So how the deposit is actually laid out, so it sits within a lens of sulfide. So it's hosted within pyrite. So we have this big cloud per se of sulfide, and then within that sulfide is actual copper sulfide zone. So it's a big cloud of pyrite, and then within that is the chalcopyrite. So we actually don't encounter a lot of that material in the actual ore body itself. That's just something that we deal with while we're getting down. So it'll just be a development problem rather than a production problem.
Great. And then from Anthony Hammond, he had a couple questions. The first of which was, what year do you expect to be in operation, and how many employees do you expect at full production stage?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So 2 weeks ago, we would have told you we were expecting to be in construction very early next year. Now with the Supreme Court decision coming up, that process is going to probably extend about a year, and we do expect to prevail in that. But that means that the earliest we could start construction is probably more towards the end of 2023 or early 24. That's best case scenario. So there's no guarantee on that, and it'll be a 2-year construction. So in production now, the best case scenario is all the way out to 26, which is quite a ways from now, but it will take a while, and that is still best case scenario.
Great. And then
jobs, we will have 240 full-time employees, and then probably another 25 contractors. So it's not a huge mine, it's fairly boutique.
Perfect. Okay, and then let me see. I'm skimming through the chat here because a lot of questions came in that way. Let's see. Are you currently working with engineering consulting companies for mine planning, infrastructure, and electrical, or is that all internal at this point?
I do that one. Sure. So anytime you've heard the word "we" in this presentation, is actually third-party contractors. So all of the design has been done by Tetra Tech and Knight Pisold. Our air quality is Bison Engineering. Our geochemistry has been done by Environment and Lisa Kirk. Our our plan has been done by Geomen. All of our flora and fauna by West Tech. All of our fishery study by Morrison Merrily, and then the person that did that who went out on his own. So trying to use the best in every realm has been our approach. And the other one I should mention is the RO system was designed by Wood. So those are the companies that we've used to date, and all information is third-party verified.
All right, well, I think that's about all we've got time for, but we'll get you all these questions. And again, the recording will be up on our YouTube channel sometime probably in the next week or so. So keep an eye out for that as well.
Super, thank you. We do see some questions in here that we'd be happy to answer, so we'll get those typed up for you and back to you.
Perfect, thanks. Yeah, we try to wrap up by 12:45 and we've got some end content here, but we'll make sure we get all that sent forward on to you ladies.
Right on. Thank you so much. We want to give a huge thank you again to you, Lacey, Nancy, Aaron, and Jenna for presenting today. It was a great presentation, very informative. We also want to invite any WIM Arizona members interested in joining one of our 8 subcommittees to reach out to us via social media or email, or sign up through a link which will be shared shortly on how to get involved if you want to join one of the subcommittees and do outreach, or in any one of the other committees. We are looking for new volunteers. We are also active on social media, so you make sure to follow us on any one of our accounts down there. And our chapter's website is also updated on a regular basis with information that may be of interest to everybody. And we also want to let you know of some of our upcoming events. We do have monthly dig-ins. Our next one will be Resolution Copper Reclamation. And then we also have our Q2 event coming up on June 18th. So that'll be in Phoenix. So if anybody wants to sign up, be on the lookout for that. And I'll turn it over to WIM Montana for their closing.
Great, thanks, Mario. Yeah, basically just mirroring kind of what you said. We are a new chapter, so we are working out a lot of the growing pains and logistics as we get going. Just encouraging people to get involved. We're volunteering our time. We are developing subcommittees and trying to get a scholarship program, but also just starting with social media and kind of the beginning steps. So anyone who does want to get involved, obviously there's the Montana chapter link on the WIM USA website. And yeah, we just really appreciate everyone tuning in today. And if you have any questions or follow-up, please feel free to reach out.
Right on. Well, with that, we want to thank everybody for taking the time and joining us. We'll see you in our future events. Thank you.
Thanks, Mario.
Thank you. Bye-bye.